Don't hate the player, hate the pesky author who hid all the clues so you couldn't figure it out. It's Liane and welcome back to another video. I recently finished a book that got me thinking specifically about games within games, about the games hidden inside mystery novels. Games so fiendish that the reader doesn't even realise that they're playing them. But before we get to the books that will make you unravel faster than you can unravel the plot lines, I would like to tell you a little bit about today's sponsor, Dice Dreams. Dice Dreams is a completely free-to-play game where you're in charge of rebuilding some thoroughly adorable little kingdoms using dice rolls. There are you waiting for it, zero ads to disrupt your player experience, and let me tell you, it's an experience because all of my free time this last week has gone on this game. I am entirely dedicated to rebuilding all of the things. My favourite things about Dice Dreams are these amazing animations from these thoroughly squishable characters, all the way through to the sheer variety of kingdoms that you get to piece back together. Also, if you, like me, have friends who like squishable little characters, then you're in luck because Dice Dreams lets you play along with your friends, whether that is sneakily creeping into their kingdom to steal all of their riches or competing bravely against them in tournaments. If you too would like to become obsessed with Dice Dreams, then you can click my link down in the description below to download it completely free from the App Store or the Google Play Store. Players who sign up by clicking my link below will get 200 free dice rolls and 1 million coins to spend on your third day of playing. And I will see you in the game. Now, I have seen a lot of book recommendation videos in the past for books that have the word game somewhere in the title. And in fact, I must be susceptible to this as a trend because I own tons of those books, like The Hunger Games, Game of Thrones, The Westing Game, Middle Game, The Glasstown Game. I could go on. I could infinitely go on, in fact. The thing that all of those books have in common is not just the word game in the title, but also the fact that you know that the entire plot of them revolves around an explicit game. And something struck me the other day when I finished The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett, and that is just how many games that thriller and mystery authors make us play without us even realising that we're on the game board. And so, my friends, I bring to you a recommendation video filled with thriller and mystery books where you are being played and you don't even know it. Where else to kick this video off than with my absolute queen, Agatha Christie. Agatha Christie's plots are traditionally quite twisty, especially the Poirot novels, which lean very much into that golden age crime thing of you maybe couldn't actually work this out without somebody sitting down and telling you the solution at the end. And I think it's kind of fair to say that you mostly expect to be played when you walk into an Agatha Christie novel, especially if you have read one of her most famous game within a game books, which is And Then There Were None. But the thing with And Then There Were None is that you're in on it. The characters don't necessarily know that they are playing in a game, but the blurb pretty much tells you so. In fact, when I ask people who have read And Then There Were None what their favourite part is, invariably it's that you don't know which one of them is going to disappear next. Yeah, I'm collecting data on this. I know who you are, you people who have told me that you have enjoyed this far too much. But an Agatha Christie novel that you don't necessarily know that you are being played in is, of course, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. In The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, we are introduced to the sleepy town of King's Abbot, where Poirot has gone to retire. But as with many of Poirot's other ventures in attempting to move away from the world of sleuthing, this one is somewhat derailed by the fact that not that long after he has moved in, a man called Roger Ackroyd turns up very much dead. Usually Poirot novels are structured around trying to find the motive. Who would have benefited by this person no longer being around? Why would they have been driven to do that? Not so in The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, in which we are simply told that Roger Ackroyd was a man who knew too much. He knew a lot. He knew a lot of things about a lot of people. Or in fact, tripping over motives. Every door you open has a new motive. But it is not until the last 10 pages that you realise what the one thing linking together all of those motives really was. And then you realise you've been played the entire time, and the feeling is delicious. Go into this novel knowing nothing more than what I have told you here. Do not Google it, do not look at any other reviews, and I guarantee you, your tiny mind will be blown. Next up, let's just talk about the book that got me started on this entire thought train. The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett is, on the surface, about a man who has been released from prison and is trying to figure out the reason why his entire life has gone wrong. Steve has had a lot of time to think about the things that he has done, from leaving school on purpose way too early and knowing that he was throwing part of his life away by doing so, to joining a local crime syndicate which got him deeper and deeper into trouble, from being casual about going to prison for shorter stretches and then being shocked when he was given 15 years. Now that he's out, Steve really wants to try and piece things back together, but he cannot shake the feeling that every single thing that went wrong in his life happened after a freak incident in his childhood, where he found a children's book on a bus and gave it to his school teacher. The two things don't really seem to go hand in hand, except Steve is sure, he is absolutely positive, that he is the reason that Miss Isles just vanished. That somehow this children's book, which is eerily similar to Enid Blyton's children's book, is really at the heart of what went wrong. And I didn't expect where this one went. I didn't expect to get played, guys. I thought, sure, this is a slightly unusual plot, and like Janice Hallett's other novel, The Appeal, this one is told in an unusual format. It is Steve making audio notes to himself in his phone because he's dyslexic and he can't write things down that are long form. And so you're reading back these transcripts which have been run through a deciphering program which does get a lot of the words wrong, or does it? I thought I was reading one book about one thing, and then about halfway through I realised, oh, there's a chance that I'm reading another book about something else and they're just like smooshed together. And then there was the reveal, and you know, I do like to go through books not really picking apart the plots, but there's a surprise and then there's this. There's a surprise and then there's realising that you were an idiot for believing anybody. Don't believe anybody in this book. Just don't believe anybody. Next up, let's talk about Lisa Jewell. You guys all know that I absolutely love The Family Upstairs and that I push it in every video that I possibly can because I think it is one of the best mystery novels that I have ever read. The thing is, with The Family Upstairs, Lisa Jewell hands you a couple of narrators right up front that you know are kinda sketchy. One of them, in fact, becomes more and more suspicious every chapter that they appear because we don't actually know who they are or how they know this information. It's only by like halfway through the book that we're like, oh, what? And then by then, it's too late. Everything's too late. We on a train and it's going down a hill and there are no brakes. But that's the thing. You know you're being played from the start and you're in on the game and you've consented to it and you're happy with that. And half of the thrill at the end is finding out that it was absolutely, whoa, inevitable. Things were inevitable. But that's not necessarily the case with the girls. And am I covertly hiding the place where my kitten chewed the corner of this book? Maybe. Well, no, not maybe. He definitely, he destroyed it. It's fine. It's fine. I've read it now, it lives on the bookshelf. I can just pretend that it doesn't exist. The chewing, I mean, not the book. We should read the book. One of the most interesting things about the girls to me is not only the fact that you don't know that you're being played until the end of the novel, but also that this is one of Lisa Jewell's books which has been reissued to match her thriller covers, but when it was actually published it was called The Girls in the Garden and it looked like this. And this is very different vibes. You're maybe like looking at this and expecting a kind of more ephemeral plot, one that's a bit more fluid, where there's not necessarily a through line but you know that there's a destination in mind at the end. And that's absolutely not what this is, what this twisty-turny game within a game actually is. On the surface, The Girls is about Grace and Pip. One of them is just a teenager and one of them is a preteen, with all of the different problems that come associated with that. Their mum Claire has moved them pretty abruptly, completely across London, away from their beautiful family house, or what's left of it, into a very small budget flat. A flat which they can't decorate, they can't really make their own, and which Claire can only afford because she has been relocated and been given assistance. The flat itself though is not really the problem, and neither is the fact that you know something shady has gone on in this family's past. The problem is in fact what lies in the back of the flat. This flat backs onto a huge communal garden, and in this crescent we have a lot of different socio-economic factors to consider, like the fact that some of these are mansion blocks, the fact that some of these people own all of these flats, and the fact that some of the kids there are actually there because they're on some sort of welfare assistance. And so the girls are kind of thrown into a weird world that's kind of Peter Pan-y. The kids feel completely safe in this gated garden and they disappear into it in gangs for hours and hours and all of the day. And I don't know what made me think that I could trust Lisa Jewell to just tell me a story about these kids trying to navigate through a horrible experience that you are very, very slowly piecing together from their past. I mean, I wasn't even that surprised when a bench pops up in the garden dedicated to a girl who died in mysterious circumstances. I thought, okay, I understand what these plots are doing together, but I had no idea I was being played. Because Lisa Jewell takes you by the hand and she leads you through an entire gallery full of clues. Big, obvious clues, and lots of like stunning fishy red herrings. To the point where you come into the last third going, do you know what, maybe I do know who did this, actually. Maybe it wasn't as intricately plotted as I thought. Maybe I know the answer. And then you're proved to be a fool. A fool who knew none of the answers and just trusted blindly. I will never trust Lisa Jewell ever again. I will, however, continue to read every book that she brings out in the future and all of her backlist. So I guess I'm a sucker for being played. Oh, and guys, just before I move on to the next book, I am going to give a little content warning for this one. Usually I don't content warn terribly much for thrillers because they usually are kind of what they say on the tin, but this one was published in 2015 and it does have some slightly outdated views on schizophrenia and mental health, so if that is something that would be triggering for you, then read with care. Now this next book I haven't talked about very much on this channel, and I think you'll see why in a second, but I have talked about the author a lot because she is one of my absolute favourites, and she is of course my namesake, Liane Moriarty. This is Big Little Lies, and I think you guys will probably tell why I don't talk about this one very much because I don't really feel usually like I need to. This one isn't of course one of her more obscure mysteries because it has an entire TV show which was adapted from it. Oh, and if you want my opinion on the TV show, I'll say, it was fine, but I think it's definitely one of those instances of the book was better. As with a lot of Liane Moriarty's books, Big Little Lies focuses on a friendship circle. We are introduced to Jane, who is a young single mum who has just moved to the area. She doesn't have any friends, but she is sending her son to one of the more elite kindergartens. Actually, that's a funny thing because I think kindergarten in my head now because the show was set in America, but the book is actually set, as with all of Liane Moriarty's other books, in Australia. And I don't actually know if they call it kindergarten in Australia. That is a mystery that we will not solve in this video. At her son's first day at this new kindergarten, nursery, place where you send very small children, she meets Madeline. Madeline is definitely involved in everything. She is head of the PTA, she deals with school plays, she deals with fundraisers, she deals with basically everything that allows her to have a window into all of the other parents' lives, whether they like it or not, generally. Most of the time. Madeline decides to take Jane under her wing, and so Jane is then introduced to Madeline's best friend, Celeste. She's very lovely, she's very kind, and she is very, very above Jane's pay grade in Jane's particular opinion. Celeste is designer clothes, designer hair, considered to be a bit of an ice queen by some of the other parents who send their kids to this very gossipy school. But then we are explicitly told by the blurb that a very, very small incident, between two of the children at this kindergarten precipitates a lot of rumours. A lot of rumours and a lot of feuds and a lot of falling outs and a lot of people taking sides. And during all of this taking sides, one of these rumours is apparently substantiated. And we go from there. We go from there thinking that the only thing that we are really picking apart in this book is Jane's past. Jane's very shady past that she doesn't talk about, that she runs every day to forget about. On the surface, it feels very much like everything that Madeline and Celeste do, everything that we are shown is just to support Jane. And then we discover that actually Jane was never at the centre of this novel. She was never the main character in this story. Cannot tell you any more than that, except you've been played. We all been played. And do you know what? Liane Moriarty does it so sweetly, so nicely. She introduces us to this game within a game so well that I didn't even care. Unlike the girls or Roger Ackroyd, where I was kind of like, you got me. I was just like, it was so perfect. It was so good. I deserved everything you did to me. Do it again. Only because I get asked this all the time. If you're looking for somewhere to go after Big Little Lies, if you came from contemporary fiction and you really enjoyed like the twisty friendship parts, then I would say read What Alice Forgot. And if you came from like the mystery thriller genres and you liked more of the if you liked any of those elements that I can't tell you about in any more detail, then I would read Truly Madly Guilty. And last but absolutely not least, I would be completely remiss in not talking about one of the chief game players of the thriller genre. A person who has played a game within a game so well that I trust her at the beginning of every book. She lulls me into a false sense of security, and by halfway through I'm like, got me again, didn't you? I've been played like a cheap fiddle and it was so good. And that person is of course Jane Harper, and that book is of course The Lost Man. This is still my beloved proof copy because I'm waiting on getting the Australian cover, which are better than the UK ones. It actually looks like this, but we're just going to go with this, okay, for the rest of it. The Lost Man opens up in the middle of absolute nowhere. It's literally in a cattle station, the furthest out that you can possibly get from civilization. Like, it takes you a day in a plane to get to an actual city. Like, you would run out of petrol by the time that you got to an actual city if you went in a straight line. We are dropped into this hot and terrifying, desolate place by a grave, which, you know, looking back on it, should probably have been a hint to me that things were not going to go smoothly for me in this book. The grave, however, does not belong to the person who has crawled onto it and curled up and died. That person is Cameron, and he is one half of a pair of brothers who have split this cattle farm land. On one side, Cameron and his family live together for generations working this land, and on the other side, Nathan has got the not so workable piece of land. He lives alone, and we know right from the very beginning that this is not a choice that he has made. And so if there was going to be a sudden and unexplained death, then everybody expected it to be Nathan. But it wasn't. It was family man Cameron, who apparently left an entirely stocked, entirely air-conditioned, working provisioned ute in the middle of nowhere, just walked out into the heat and curled up in a grave to die. Being miles and miles away from anywhere complicates getting answers 100-fold. Police don't have the resources, and waiting for forensics is going to take months. And so Nathan decides that he is going to have to look into exactly what happened to Cameron himself. And so, again, we know from the beginning that there's definitely something going on here, because whether Cameron did this to himself or whether somebody else did this to Cameron, there is an underlying reason. He's clearly not just a happy family man. Something has happened. And so we know that somebody is playing a game in this book. We just don't realise that not only was Cameron a pawn in the game, and now so is Nathan, but also so are we. Because Jane Harper does a really, really amazing job of throwing in incidental things, encounters that happen that just flesh out Nathan and all of the other characters in this book a little bit more. And so you really don't think about it as being given potential clues. You just kind of think that you're getting the lay of the land. You're getting the backstory of these characters. You're getting to know more about the choices that they've made, why they live the way that they do. But actually no, what Jane Harper was doing was saying, this is the reason, this is the reason, this is the reason, this is the reason, and there's just no way. There's no way to realise what the reason is. There's no way to realise that you've been played until the conclusion unravels itself and you're like, no. The thing that you never thought possible wasn't just possible but was actually the only solution all along. My invisible witch's hat off to Jane Harper, always, for completely screwing me up and ruining my perception of everything forever. Please bring out your next book now. I've waited a really long time. So there you go, guys. There were 5 thriller and mystery books in which I thought I knew what game was afoot, but actually I had no idea. Books where the game within a game changed everything and I just blithely sat along like la 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 until everything blew up in my face, which actually seems like a bit of a metaphor for my life, to be perfectly honest. So as always, please let me know, have you read any of the books that were in this video? Did you have a similar reading experience where you realised that you were just a poor little pawn that was being moved around a board and there was no way you were going to be able to guess? And please, if you have read any other books that have taken you by surprise like this, any other books that have turned out to be a game within a game, then let me know about them. I want to read them. This is clearly a trope that I am drawn towards. And of course, don't forget to check out Dice Stream, something that you can do for a little bit of respite in between all of these twisty turny books. Again, my link is down in the description below. Go roll and have some fun. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. It's the best thing you can do to support my channel, and if you are new here, please subscribe for more twisty turny recommendation videos in the future. I will speak to you all soon. Bye! Have you ever read a book that you loved so much that you wish that you could erase it from your memory just so you could read it again fresh? Or is that just me?